Hey everybody, welcome to my quick review of Clair Obscur Expedition 33. I'm going to try to do my best to not introduce any spoilers here. If you want zero spoilers, I would suggest you just turn away. There's probably going to be a few. If you've never played the game and you want to know absolutely nothing about this game, then you probably need to go ahead and just go to another video. I finished this game this week. I did it on story mode. Yes, I'm a weenie. I understand that. That's okay. I don't have time to learn everything there is about this game. But I will say that I was absolutely blown away from the moment I started. From the beginning prologue to the end of each act, each chapter, all the way to beating the final boss. And getting to even some of the side content, which I'm still going through, it just blows me away. Each part of the storytelling that they've done, each and every part of the story was just well crafted. The soundtrack, we'll just get into all of this. So let me get started. I'm going to kind of break these down through some different categories. First, let's start with visuals. Now, this was done, I believe, in Unreal Engine. There's just so much to see here, right? Every area that you go into has a different tone, has a different atmosphere. It's very unique. There's different challenges. The environment is just very so much. And then also the enemies, right? So the enemies in those areas also vary. So they kind of change. You don't keep getting repeat enemies. You don't keep getting repeat bosses. You get a little, but I mean, it's very well balanced, and there's a lot of mixture and a lot of variety, so you won't get bored. And then getting to the enemies, there's just so much to offer, right? So, you've got, these floating enemies that can dodge. You've got enemies that kind of pound you and can pound your entire team. You've got different types of, just variants that have certain resistances, all well balanced, all well done, just top notch there on the enemy design. And when you get into the bosses are even better. They ratchet it up to another level. Some of the bosses you may get extremely frustrated and make you want to rage quit. This game is meant to be hard. It was not meant to be easy. It's meant to be a parry dodge. Even though it's turn-based, it was meant to use that parry dodge system. So they introduce a lot of different mechanics that you have to do to almost beat every boss. There are ways to beat this, to tank through it without using the parry dodge system. I wouldn't recommend it, but the bosses are just awesome. They're believable. And sometimes they get a little too frustrating. They'll have second phases, but it's just so well done, you probably won't even care by the time you defeat them. The story. So once again, going to talk a little bit about the story. Not too much. I'm going to not try to spoil a whole lot. But if you don't want any spoilers, last chance. Walk away, step away from this video. The story from beginning to end is just one mind-bending twist and beautifully crafted. The prologue is just this beautiful story about this couple, right, that has kind of been estranged because of the events. So let me give you a little background of what the overall gist of this game is, right? These people live in a world where there's this huge monolith in the distance that has numbers on it. Whenever each year, they call her the Paintress, and the Paintress basically stands up, wipes away the number, and decreases it by 1. When that happens, everybody that is that age basically just goes away. They basically get Thanos snapped, right? That is kind of the gist. So there's a lot of grief. So you're down to, they're at year 33. They were at 34 going to 33. So basically anybody that was 34 years old is getting ready to be snapped and be gone. Now, this just keeps happening, right? This has happened since year 100. So you've got 60 years of this happening every year, and you've got a culture that's used to just living in this constant grief and PTSD of all these people basically getting snapped away, and the whole goal of the society is to go after the paintress and try to get to her, to defeat her, so that maybe they can just survive and not just get totally eliminated. That being said, the whole kind of theme of the game is dealing with grief or not dealing with grief, and there's just a lot of loss, there's a lot of death. The premise of the game is basically death of a society. But as you go on, it just kind of builds and builds and builds, and there's twists and turns, and it's fantastic. Each one, you're just like, whoa, I didn't see that coming, or wow. I mean, it's been amazing to sit here and go read, just social media posts where people are just like, oh my gosh, I reached the end of Act 1. I can't believe they did that. Oh my gosh, I reached the end of Act 2. Wow, how could they do this again? It's just amazing me. It's not just me, it's others. But what this really did was, I think, is why this game resonated so much with me, is it talks about dealing with grief and how people kind of cope with grief. And myself, I lost my mother in October. It wasn't unexpected. She was older. She had been through a lot of health issues. But it made me think a lot about, how did I deal with that grief? Did I deal with it properly? Did I ever let go? Do I need to do additional things? And I think a lot of people are going to resonate with that, because if they've lost a loved one, or if they've lost someone anytime recently, they're going to sit down and examine their life and say, wow, did I deal with that grief properly? So I think that's why when people talk about how this story just works and how it just kind of captivates you, I think that's one of the main factors. I think people, maybe if they said it doesn't resonate with them, maybe they haven't lost a loved one in a while. But most people have. Death is part of life. So that's kind of one of the big things. And if you are dealing with some grief, you may want to avoid this game, because that's kind of a big thing and a big deal with this game. So kind of expounding on the story, let's talk about the characters. Each one of the characters are just fantastic, right? They're well developed. You don't find out too much about them at the beginning, but as you gather your group, as you gather your party, you'll eventually get these kind of mismatched characters, and they work well. Each one of them works well. And as you go through the story, you find out more about each individual character. And then you even have these relationships that you can build at camp that gives you additional powers for your characters. And that's a great thing to do, because not only does it give you additional powers, but you find out a little bit more about each character. So it really works well. Each one was really, really well crafted, and each one is very unique. And that kind of goes into the combat. So the combat, it's a definitely turn-based, but it's also very much, how you put it, Elden Ring, Demon Souls, Dark Souls kind of parry dodge system, right? So you've got your turn base, but you have to dodge, you have to parry, and then you also get action points so that you can cast your own skills. They introduced some really cool, additions to it. So there's gradient attacks. So basically, as you use skills, you build up a gradient level and you can unleash this big attack that doesn't cost a turn. There's also, gradient blocks. There's group blocks, group jumps. So there's lots of dynamics that the combat brings, lots of mechanics there that are really cool and really interesting. They also, each individual character kind of has this rank system, is what I'll call it. So if you ever heard of like an A, B, C, S rank, so like as you do actions, your characters can gain this rank, or they'll gain overcharge. That's another trope that's been used in other games. Or one character has like a wheel, so the wheel spins random, but some skills allow you to get it in a certain spot. And basically, if it's the wheel's in the right spot, it gives a buff to their skills. So each one of those individual things are kind of, hit or miss. You got to learn it. You got to understand how to work it, and then, make it optimized for your party and for each character that's in the actual battles. The one kind of downfall that I found with the battle system is you can't swap in and out people during battle. So whoever your core people are, that's who has to stay in there. The one thing I did like that they kind of made up for that is if your main party dies, if you've got any reserves, then you can bring them into the battle. This saved me several times during boss battles. I would be down, I'd lose my last one out of the main party, and I'd bring in my reserve party because I'd have that boss really close to defeat, bring them in, finish it off, and everybody comes back. So that there's kind of, ups and downs, right, with the combat system. But overall, I think if you can do the parry and dodge, do that, it works out really good. So the weapons, I didn't find the weapons to be too unique. There's a good variety of weapons. You kind of pick them up. Some have different attributes that help you out more than others. Depending on when you rank them up, they can give you different abilities or help you out in different ways. I didn't think there was enough variation there to kind of, wow me. But overall, the weapons were good. But the Pictos, I think I'm saying that right, that's where the game really shines. So this is kind of like this extra element. It's this extra thing that gives your characters extra abilities. So you can stack 3 of them, and then once you've stacked those 3, if you use one of those in battle 4 times, it's very complicated. If you use it 4 times, then you've learned it. So then you don't actually have to have it equipped. You can spend these other points that you get, these Lumina points, and increase your character stats, and then they can equip those learnt skills. So basically, they're kind of like skills that give you bonuses. It's a very interesting system. If you're going to play the game, learn how to use it early because it will help you out throughout the game. So I really like that. I really like the way that shaped out. There's also some other great things, like there's some side characters that aren't part of the main that were just, kind of funny. There were some that just really added to the mood. The dialogue is top notch. It's not, campy. It's not, oh, I'm tired of listening to these people. Like, some games like this, I just want to skip through dialogue. I don't care. Just get me to the next, phase of the game. In this, I wanted to hear every character's dialogue. I wanted to hear every side character's dialogue. I wanted to stop and talk to everybody that I possibly could. I mean, that's just how good this game was. This game actually kept me up at night. Like, normally I'd play maybe an hour or 2 at night of a game. This game I would play 3 or 4 hours. I'd give up my sleep, and then when I lay down, I'd still be thinking about the game and want to go back and play it. Sometimes, like on the weekends, I'd get up early before everybody else got up, and I'd go play the game. So overall, fantastic experience. This is my game of the year. Might be the game of the last 3 or 4 years. I don't know. It's just that good. From a dad perspective, since this is Year of the Dad Gaming, I will give you a few kind of cautions if you're going to let your kids play this. There is a little bit of language, very minimal, just kind of scattered here and there. Not, it's not horrible. So if you're worried about language, it's not too bad. A couple F-bombs. I'd equate it to a PG-13 movie. There are some pretty graphic scenes where, people die and things happen. If you're leery about that, you may want to watch out for those. But the main thing is the, what I talked about earlier was the grief, right? Talks about death. It has a lot of death, a lot of grief. So if your kids aren't good at processing that, or, there's been a recent death in your family, you may want to watch that, and you may want to kind of sit down with them and talk to them about this game. Otherwise than that, fantastic game. I can't find a lot. Like when I sat down to look at what I didn't like about the game, I felt like I was kind of nitpicking, One of the nitpicks I have is in the overworld. I don't really like kind of some of that, how that works. It's hard to tell where you can go, where you can't go. And then you get to these areas that are just, they're really static and your character's moving around. It's kind of a side angle. It's just kind of weird. It kind of felt like it was half finished. And maybe there was a a tone they were trying to set with that. I'm not sure, but it didn't click with me. Besides that, I really wish they would give an option, a true option where you did not have to dodge and parry. I've seen so many people that have just said, nope, this game's not for me. I can't do that. And it takes time, right? Like there were several times while I was playing this game, even on story mode, that I just said, nope, I'm done with this game. I'd step away from it for a day. It would eat at me that I had to finish this story. I would jump back in, buckle down, beat the enemy, keep on moving. That's kind of the way you got to approach this. If it frustrates you too much, it's probably best to step away, come back fresh, keep on moving, because you don't want to miss the story. It's that good. All right, that's all I've got. I'd love to hear everybody else's thoughts if they played this game, or if there's any other games that you think are like this that you'd recommend to me. I do love turn-based games, even though I can't really call this a full turn-based game. It is, but it also isn't. So, if I had to give it a rating, it definitely would be a 10 out of 10. And I don't take that lightly. I don't rate games that well, but this is one of those games that, somebody said it defines a generation. I don't know if it defines a generation, but it definitely will define this year and probably the next couple of years that games will be compared to this game. It's just that good. So if you haven't played it, it's on Game Pass. You got Game Pass, go try it out. Give it a little bit of time. It takes a while to get through some stuff. Otherwise, if you've got some other ways to get it on Steam, find it on sale. It's actually, I think it's only $50 besides. So once again, that's another win. It's not even a $70 game. So give it a try. Go out there, play it. Clair Obscur, Expedition 33. The soundtrack, the gameplay, everything is just on point. Play it. All right. Thanks all, and we'll talk to you next time.